find out. Hey, there she is. More stuff. That's why she was late. Thank you.
Your flags. Yeah, I asked him to. Terrific.
Good. Good morning, everyone. We're running a little bit behind with the beginning of our meeting, but we're getting everything set up right now, so please bear with us for just a couple of minutes.
I've been okay. There definitely is annoying out there.
Well, you'll want them when they start doing the stuff around the windows itself. That's when you'll want them.
We leave them in your office so people can go there. I mean, because that makes sense.
Okay. And then I'm assuming you laid these here for me to sign. Okay, I'll just put them in the desk right now. Thank you for getting those done. Oh, okay. This.
So I'll get to that. That's me.
All right. Good morning, everyone. I'm Darren Hamilton, Chairman of the Jefferson County Board of Supervisors, and I'd like to bring this Monday morning meeting to order. We will start with acknowledge the minutes from the previous meeting.
Second.
I have a motion from Dimmitt, a second from Sandquist. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Our county engineer is not here with us yet, so we'll move on to consider pay increases for secondary road department employees. We have a sheet in our packet that pertains to that. These would be employees Wes Davis. He is at a title of an EO2, Equipment Operator 2, at a pay range 12. This would be step B for a base wage salary of $24.79 an hour. Dennis Peebler, he's a EO2, Equipment Operator 2. He's also at pay range 12, step B, and his pay will go to $24.79 an hour. Ryan Metz is the third one on our list here. He is classified as an Equipment Operator 1 at pay range 6, step D, and his scale is $23.13 an hour. I have a motion from Dimmitt, a second from Sandquist to approve this resolution. All those in favor say aye. 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 All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Yeah. All right. Let's move on to, well, I don't really want to talk about number 2, which is consider the plat of survey for re-subdivision of Lot 5 of the Adam subdivision. I'm going to wait until the county engineer is here for that as well. Next, we've got on our list, meet with Matthew Muir from Iowa. He's the Iowa State Director for Coalition Against Bigger Trucks. And I'm sorry that our engineer hasn't arrived yet here this morning. Are you on mute?
Nope. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Okay, let me get you turned up a little bit here so that I can get everybody else to hear us in the room.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Matt, good morning. Thank you for being here.
Yep, no problem. And so, yeah, my name is Matthew Muir, and I'm with the Coalition Against Bigger Trucks. And it's kind of in our name. You know, we're against bigger trucks, not necessarily big trucks. Trucks form a really the core of our economy and everything that we do, but it's proposals to make them bigger that we take issue with. And kind of before I get into that, do you have any issues in terms of truck traffic and the residual safety effects and infrastructure that come to mind right now in the county?
Yeah,
I'll let-
some questions.
I'll let Sandquist take this first.
Mm-hmm.
Here before last, the legislature, they approved bigger trucks, the logging trucks, which we
Yep.
were concerned about. So can you tell us, are you looking at county roads or DOT roads, or what are you talking about?
All of the above. Yep.
Okay.
Matthew, this is Lee Dennett. Can you hear me?
Yep.
So, just for clarification on follow up with what Dee said. Sorry.
No, that's all right. I just,
In reference to what she was, that I believe it was, I can't remember the weight now, but it was an excessive weight on county roads for logging.
Yep. I believe it's north of 150,000 pounds.
130,000 pounds.
130. Okay. Yep.
Our issue, I think, and Scott, if I'm wrong on this, our issue, generally speaking, is not necessarily length, but
Mhm.
overall weight because of our bridges and stuff. And we've had to close and reduce weight limits on so many bridges simply because of our financial situation as far as that part of it goes. It costs so much to do bridges, and Scott does a great job, but
Mm-hmm.
I'm like you, I'm not necessarily, I don't want to stifle the economy, but by the same token, the legislature is passing laws that limit our ability to raise funds, if you will, while at the same time creating scenarios that cost us more money.
Yep. Yeah, so it sounds like that there's some issues right now, and the last thing we want to do is compound them. So when I say bigger trucks, there's really two flavors of that. The first is a weight increase. So really nationwide, the standard weight limit right now is 80,000 pounds. And a proposal defeated in 2015 in the U.S. House would raise that to 91,000 pounds nationwide. And then in terms of length, so right now, a double trailer, they're kind of regional. You might see them running on I-80, but at only 3 extra feet of space. Right now, those are 28 feet each. That's only 3 feet longer in terms of storage than a normal single trailer. So they tend to be somewhat regional and rare. Now, a proposal, again defeated in 2015, would increase those to 33 feet each. And at 66 feet of trailer, not only would doubles become really the national standard and a lot more prevalent, they'd be even longer than they are today. So both of those proposals come up in some form almost each and every year. And on the weight side, so Iowa would be uniquely affected. So some heavier trucks are already allowed. In terms, the state's got some higher weight limits on state and county local roads. And then, of course, the logging trucks and, farm vehicles, things like that. If a truck is ever bound for the interstate or for another state, it's going to abide by that 80,000 pound weight limit. So it's hard to tell how many kind of go down to that when they want to operate higher. But even in a state with higher truck weights, if you raise the national standard, you're going to see a lot more heavy trucks running on your roads and bridges. And kind of on the note of bridges, so it's a story across the state in terms of counties being negatively impacted. Iowa is unfortunately, they have the highest number of poor rated bridges by the FHWA. Now they don't have the highest number of bridges, but they have the most poor bridges. And I believe somewhere less than 20 of them are federal bridges. It's state, county, and municipal bridges, the counties in particular. So the reason we've been successful at pushing back on these proposals primarily comes down to our coalition, which each and every year steps up to oppose these. The Iowa State Association of Counties has been a phenomenal partner. We've worked a little bit with the State Association of County Engineers, nationally the county engineers. Simply because these trucks run on county roads and damage them in terms of both road and bridge damage. The second group is law enforcement. The Iowa State Troopers Association has been a very close partner. And then nationally, the sheriffs, the troopers, and the chiefs. And then the third group we work with is transportation industry. So not a huge surprise. Most of our funding comes from the rail industry, simply because you have a longer, heavier truck, freight starts to shift from the rails to our roads. But we also work with the trucking industry. Most drivers are opposed. A lot of trucking companies are opposed. They wouldn't necessarily profit anymore. Their costs go up and the risks go down. The folks that are pushing this on the weight side, you have Anheuser-Busch, Miller Coors, Kraft Foods. On the length side, you've got Amazon, UPS, and FedEx. All companies that are doing fairly well right now and don't necessarily need a boost in profits at the expenses of the taxpayer. So, and I'll send this information along after the meeting. The key document we look at is a 2016 US DOT study that ultimately recommended no increase in length, no increase in weight. A big focus of it was bridges. They looked at a segment of the federal bridge stock and found billions of dollars in additional cost and thousands of bridges that would either have to be posted or retrofitted or completely redone. Now, of course, county bridges are built to far lower standards and tend to be more aged than federal infrastructure. So the implications on that level would be far more dire. And then, of course, road damage. And then looking at safety, a couple states that have heavier trucks, they were found to have a 47 to 400% higher crash rate. It really comes down to common sense. A longer, heavier vehicle, harder to stop, harder to control, and if involved in a crash is going to be more devastating. So
I have a couple of questions for you.
Yep.
I'm Darren Hamilton again. My concern comes with not so much the overall length of a particular vehicle, but when technology creates itself an advantage to having what is known as a truck train setup, where you have several tractor trailers that are linked together by a communication device between them so that they can travel down the road with the lead truck using more fuel than the trucks following it. So a company like Amazon could get 5 80,000-pound semi-tractor trailers, one at the end of the next, in a row going down a major highway.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Has there any thought or consideration been put into that? Because again, that's not going to raise the truck weight limit, but it will create pockets of areas where vehicles will not be able to get around those other vehicles very easily. You also have where at different stops, they're going to have to allow different vehicles to get out of the train that's going on with that. And in my thinking, you are going to have more danger and to the motoring public with that setup than you would a 66-foot long setup trailer that may be carrying 93,000 pounds or 96,000 pounds worth of weight inside of it. So has there anything in your group been brought forward about this kind of technology or thinking? Because we are moving in that direction, especially with electric vehicles, which do weigh more than what a standard semi-tractor weighs, and the communications that work between them in order to make that operate.
Yep. So that's a technology that's called truck platooning, where they're not mechanically connected, but they're digitally connected. And we've started to see, we're tracking it very closely, we've started to see states amending their laws on a very limited basis to run a pilot program. So of course, in order to even operate one of those truck trains, those platoons, you have to amend the laws that allow for closer follow distance. Because normally, a truck 5 feet behind it or 10 feet behind another truck, that'd be against the law. So a lot of states have passed very limited pilot program type testing. It's something that we're looking at very closely, because you're right. Not only, if it's a chain of 5 vehicles, we're kind of representing hundreds of yards.
Yeah.
And if that lead vehicle crashes, which it's inevitable, right? You know, it could be the best driver in the world. There will be a crash. You have 5 vehicles stacked up behind it that are going to come pummeling through. Now, you know, the Amazons and the UPS and FedEx, those companies are still pushing for the longer doubles, as at the same time that they're pushing for the platoons. So it wouldn't surprise me if they want platoons of longer doubles and heavier trucks.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's something that we're very closely monitoring, and we may oppose in the future if it tries to be large scale, but at this point it tends to be limited to like test roads, no other vehicles, things like that.
Okay.
I've got a question. I recently got back from a vacation where we drove from California up to Yellowstone and then back here. So I saw a lot of triple trailers. Can you talk about that out west?
Yep. So there's a selection of states out west that allow triple trailer trucks. So it would be 3 28-foot trailer trucks. Now there's a federal law in the books that prevents any expansion of that. It's called the LCV freeze. That's called a longer combination vehicle. And those are pretty wild to pass. There's really 1 or 2 routes this side of the Mississippi River that allows them. Northern Indiana, a little bit in Ohio. You know, absolutely dangerous. You know, when it comes to the sway, you can kind of see them, you know, they crack the whip. And a study in 2000 by US DOT found anytime you have more than 1 trailer, you have an 11% higher fatal crash rate. So definitely a lot of concerns with those triples. And I think the idea is, now they have a lot of mountains out west, which I can't imagine operating one in the mountains. But the idea is, you know, out there you have a lot more flat ground, less populated areas. So it's a better fit, I guess. That's their claim. And it kind of goes to the longer double trailers, just the simple idea that a one-size-fits-all policy like that with 66 feet of trailer, where, you know, treating a rural road in the middle of North Dakota the same way as an interstate going through Chicago or Des Moines it's not good policy, not good policy making at all. So
Matthew?
Yep.
In terms of state and federal and county, and if I'm wrong, please say so, but I'm assuming that what we're talking about here is federal regulations for interstate travel as far as trailer length, weight, so on and so forth.
Yep.
Okay, so does that override, or can it override state regulations regarding weight limits on our bridges and county roads and so on and so forth? In other words, if there's federal regulation, and I'm not in favor of the heavier trucks, so don't misunderstand, but if there's federal regulation, does that only apply to
The federal highway system.
highway system?
Yep. So a couple levels to that. The simple answer is yes, it applies to the federal system. But it also applies to what's called reasonable access. So whether it's a U.S. highway or an interstate, trucks get, and it depends on the state, 1 to 5 miles of access off that highway. So that's the first step. Now the second step is states would tend to follow suit. You know, if 91,000 pounds were to pass, that becomes the new standard truck weight. Now those trucks are already allowed on state and county roads in Iowa, so the laws wouldn't have to change. But what would change is the frequency of those vehicles. You know, right now you're not going to see too many of them because they can't go on the interstate, they can't leave the state, just, you know, kind of local stuff. But when the weight limit is blown out nationwide, almost any truck operating on a county road would be up to 91,000 pounds. So in a state where their local limit is 80,000 pounds, it would be very likely that they would change their laws, simply because if that's the new national standard, you know, trucks have to get to and from, you know, their local businesses onto the highways. So I've never heard of a state having lower weight limits than the national standard.
Right. So if we're allowed, or if we're required to put weight limits on bridges, can we not put weight limits on roads?
Yeah, no, I think, could you not? Yeah, I mean, you can put weight limits on bridges. You can put weight limits on roads. It gets, so that's one thing I learned meeting with county engineers is it's an expensive venture. The signage, the analysis, things like that. And I think we all know that helps a lot, but people don't always abide by it. Whether it's someone who accidentally crosses and doesn't see a sign, or someone who intentionally crosses. So, if the frequency of 91,000-pound trucks increases, it's going to be a lot of pressure on the bridge system. Bridges that may have previously not needed to be posted have to be posted, closed down, retrofitted, etc. But at the county level, I need to check on the specific state laws. I imagine there are provisions that would allow posting of a road, but I'm not sure about a county-wide weight limit.
Okay.
All right, any other questions, Scott? Do you have any questions? Our county engineer has joined us here, so this is Scott Klein.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the problem with, like if there's federal or state laws that say heavier trucks can be on our county roads, that can supersede what the county wants to do, any kind of ordinance or whatever. I mean, so far it hasn't with bridges so much, other than now we have to rate bridges that didn't have to be rated before, because before it was illegal for that load to even be on the highway. Now it's legal to be on the highway. We had to post something like 20 more bridges that otherwise didn't have to be posted at all. And but it didn't do any good for the roads. They could still be on those roads through that state law that stuck us with them.
So who then assumes, if it's mandated by the federal government, for that matter, even the state, and we don't have the funds to upgrade bridges, so we end up shutting them down, which means those roads in some instances become unusable as far as getting from point A to point B. That you have your local traffic, but as far as getting from point A to point B, and if the federal government and or the state opens this up and says, okay, you can have this amount of who assumes liability if somebody ignores a weight limit and exceeds that, and then there's a crash or infrastructure
Collapse or
something.
Usually that's by the driver themselves. The owner of the truck or the driver of the truck takes the responsibility for the damages that they've done. An example of that is Highway 78, Skunk River, over by Coppock. It used to have a pony truss or a high truss bridge that went across there. Prior to that being taken down and rebuilt into what it is now, a semi-trailer that had round bales of hay on it hit the west end of the bridge going east underneath it and damaged support structures that were in through there. They traced the truck down to an owner in Muscatine and then assessed him for the damages to the bridge in order to make sure that it was usable again until the time they could tear it down and replace it with the new bridge that they have. So I know that they go to great extent to try to bring people to holding them accountable for what they have done to public property. And I know a lot of this, Matthew, because I worked for the DOT for 25 years as a design technician, and I've also worked at the county here for 5 years as design technician over a 30-year time span. So I've got a lot of experience with roads and roadways and different types of standards that go on. I'm glad we've got a good county engineer here with us that understands this stuff very well as also. So that's where I come from, and that's kind of to answer your question, Lee, that it's going to be the responsibility of the driver, because they're going to have to be the ones that know that they're overweight before they go, and they have to be conscious of the fact that they knew that when they left.
Now, that doesn't That doesn't help us with the problem that, bridge will take more than what's posted there, but what's posted there is to help the bridge last, is also there to help the bridge last longer. As if you keep having heavy loads that, will make it over this time, eventually there's gonna be one of those same loads that's not gonna make it over there. And it's because of the damage that all those other loads caused before that one got there.
What's the sidebar? I know this is not part of Matthew's bailiwick, but is that something that we need that should be ordinance specific so we have some authority or some teeth or whatever to enforce those weight limits?
I believe that's already in state code for enforcing the weight limits. That's why we put those signs out there in the first place. But again, it's still up to the owner of the equipment, the operator of the equipment, to know what his equipment is supposed to be loaded at and what it actually is loaded at. And you can't sit there and say, well, I didn't know that as a driver. Somebody just dumped everything in the back of me before I left. No, you can't. You're responsible with your CDL license to make sure that your load is proper for the equipment that you're driving. So, I see that becoming a little bit of a problem when the governor lifts weight restrictions on vehicles during harvest season, especially if there's some adverse weather or something and everybody's trying to get their crops into town. And so you'll get an 80,000 pound semi that's got 90,000 pounds loaded on it because they're allowed to do that because of the proclamation by the governor. So that shoots all of this stuff in the foot when you're trying to hold somebody responsible for ongoing damage or continual damage to a bridge, or the one-time shot where after 40 loads have already gone across, number 41 hits it and boom, everything falls apart. So Matthew, thank you for listening into our little side conversation.
Oh, no problem. And it really accentuates, we've got issues now. And some of them seem insurmountable. The number of poor bridges it's going to be, tough to fix up and get to the point where things are good. The last thing we want is longer and heavier loads. So really the main purpose of my call, and I'll send a copy of this letter, we're gathering names of local officials and law enforcement throughout the state, just a kind of a standard issue group letter that goes to the congressional delegation. Just kind of saying, hey, a lot of challenges right now in the state. Last thing we want is longer, heavier trucks. Keep them as they are today. So I will send a copy of that letter along. And I actually believe Sheriff Morton has already added his name. I worked with him a little bit last week. So
Okay.
a lot of law enforcement and county folks in the region have added their names. So I'll send that along, and would absolutely love to have your support.
Yeah, I think that's something that we would support doing, either as the chairman signing it or each one of us signing onto the document. So if you get that sent out to us in a form that we can get it back to you with, we'll be more than happy to do that as well.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for your time and support. I'll send those documents along. And any other questions?
No, thank you.
I think we're good. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you, Matthew.
Enjoy the rest of your meeting.
Yep. Have a great day.
Yep, you too. Bye.
All right, we're going to move back to meet with the county engineer on our agenda here. So Scott Klein, bring us up to date on what's been going on.
I'm still blading gravel and dirt roads. We're doing some blading for dust control because Efron and Benz have come back and they're doing a second application. Had to move some trees off of the road after the August 10th storm. It was like probably 2 or 3 or 4, something like that.
Yeah, Billy told me that.
And then we put in some culverts that were 6 foot diameter, so pretty good size ones. On 220th and on Ironwood.
Corrugated metal.
Yes. We've got, besides that one that we, 8 foot 8 inch diameter tanker car that we used to replace the old Howe Bridge, I think was the name. There off of Middle Glasgow Road. We've got 3 other locations where we've got big single tanker cars, and they're more or less considered culverts because they're not the 20-foot length or bridges. So anyway, we got 3 of those left to do. Ditching was done on Marigold. The north half is pretty well done, so they're starting on the south half of Marigold to do ditching. Hedgerow Repair on Business 34 east of town was done. They'd already done the edge line striping there and kind of holding off on some of the Hedgerow Repair till they get the edge lines painted on those. So which brings up that the painting and striping, they're working on white edge lines now. Let's see. So equipment maintenance, putting lights on. Finally got a truck delivered that was ordered last year. It was paid out of last year's funds, but let's see, mowing on Osage and on Packwood for site distance. Oh yeah, so where Osage and Packwood meet, got a request from Lena to mow that, and so that is mowed, and then
In that, on that,
Sage in Glasgow or Packwood? Because you just said Packwood.
Yeah, I know.
Osage and Glasgow is where it was.
Right, right,
And then
right.
also location on Packwood at 125th.
Right, that, yeah, okay. That makes more sense to me.
so Osage and Glasgow, and I know that we've just finished that road and as far as that part goes. But I've asked this question before, and I'm sure it'd be expensive, but I really truly am wondering if, and I know part of the issue before was purchasing a right of way, but I really wonder if we need to straighten that intersection. Because, you know, it is even difficult to see back to the right. It's a very similar situation as to what we had out on Salina and Pleasant Plain Road before we straightened that intersection. And part of the problem is that when you pull up, that you go to the right a little bit so that you can see down that road, it impacts your ability to see left. And if you go straight ahead enough to be able to see clearly to the left, it impacts your ability to see right.
Yeah, so I need to get a survey redone that French Reniker did because it has the previous property owner named on there. So I need to get the new property owner, and that owner is understand the situation, willing to work with us. If we can get that done, accomplished, to get more sight distance right away there, and we can cut the ditch down so that when you do look that direction, if you're coming from the south and you get there and you look down, you can see the whole road.
Mhm.
We want to get it to where it's the same way when you're coming from the north. And then you still have that issue to the, when you're coming from the north and you look right.
Yeah.
But at least you won't have, well, the problem I have when I pull up there is I look down there and go, well, you gotta stare for a long time, make sure there isn't somebody coming up out of there.
Right.
And then you look that way and, oh, now somebody's coming from that way. Well, now you just keep
Well,
that back
you're
and forth deal.
pickup too, which makes it
A little easier, yeah, because your sight distances are.
it's a whole different scenario.
So if we can get one direction vastly improved, then you don't have quite as much of a problem trying to see whether somebody's coming from one way or the other. To be able to tell, okay, nobody's coming from that way, nobody from that way. Maybe glance back.
So-
As you turn.
Can you go ahead and work on that then with the new owner?
Yes,
You
I
got-
talked to him over the winter.
But who would be responsible for French Reniker redoing a survey? Or is that just renaming who the owner is on that,
Just
the existing survey?
revising the survey.
Okay, so they're,
Might have to do something different based on the fact that they bought some land. And, it just depends on what lines they've got on the other one. I mean, if they're showing that Natty owned the whole thing and now you got Natty owning some of it, I mean, not part of the easement, but owning some of what's on the survey, you might have to throw in a line there.
okay.
But whatever adjustments, need to get them, I've mentioned to them before out there about getting that revised. And, we just have to get after them, get it revised.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else from the week's road work? Because one we'll move on.
Had a today's Marvin's last day with,
Oh,
so
Mhm.
just thought I'd mention that. Moving on to a different employer, so.
And we've already approved the pay increases for the three employees for the road department.
Okay.
EO2s and EO1. So that's already been moved, seconded, and signed. Paperwork to the auditor.
Okay.
Anything else?
And,
Because then we'll move on to item number 3 on our list, discuss and consider, item number 2, which is consider plat of survey for re-subdivision of Lot 5 of Adams subdivision. And I think we've got a letter here from you, Scott. Proposed plat of survey for re-subdivision of Lot 5 of Adams subdivision shows Lot 5A being added to the adjoining parcel to the east, said parcel being situated outside of the Adams subdivision. The combined parcel is furthermore proposed to remain combined for future transfers and not be sold as more than one parcel. For this proposed situation, access to Lot 5A will be from the parcel that is proposed to be combined with, and no other access needs to be designated for the purposes of re-subdivision. County road access to said combined parcel shall continue to be from existing and/or future permitted entrances from Glasgow Road. The construction of any portion of access that is not already in place shall be the responsibility of the developers. Jefferson County shall not be asked or required to provide maintenance of any portion of the access. Any proposed widening, alteration of this access within the existing right-of-way shall require an entrance permit. And Scott sent this to us August 14th. So we have the copy of the plat of survey here in front of us. We can see that Lot 5A is a 1 acre piece that's approximately 85 feet wide at one end, 74 feet wide at the other. Probably total width, majority through it is the 74 foot wide. And it is just in addition to Lot 5. So,
well, Lot 5.
or subtraction from Lot 5, I guess. So,
Now, if this was not in a subdivision and it's just property being added to another one, it wouldn't have even come to the board.
right, since this is already part of a subdivision, we needed to bring it to the board so that we could approve removing that 1 acre from Lot 5 and adding it to the other. Is that what we're doing here? Okay. And
So I apologize because I never do quite understand what I assume that Lot 5 is not landlocked. Would you take that piece out?
No, this piece doesn't, as far as I know, doesn't provide any access to Glasgow Road. You have to come from lot 5 onto it now to get access. But in the future, you have to come off to this other tract or parcel that's outside of the subdivision to get to lot 5. And because it's still a subdivision and the board's acting on it, through that letter there, I wanted to make sure that nobody interprets that you've got a public road coming into it, or that we have to do any maintenance on any kind of access to it. It doesn't require a public street or anything like that.
Okay. You don't see any problems though with this being allowed to happen then, as far as within our subdivision regulations and how those operate?
Well, the attorney in this situation provided a letter.
Right, we have that letter here, which reads, Dear Supervisors, Bob Adam owns Lot 5 and 5A, which he has agreed to sell to the Merrills, who own and live on the lot adjoining to the east. There is no homeowners association for the subdivision, nor are there any restrictive covenants on the subdivision, which was done over 20 years ago, when Bob Adam divided the rural property in such a way as to keep the farm land and convey off building lots along Glasgow Road. Lot 5A will be absorbed into the Merrill parcel and require no separate public road access. So that's the determination from the attorney, Tim B. Kiken.
Yeah, so sometimes homeowners association covenants and restrictions and rules would covered in this case, but not according to the attorney. So that's one thing that we've cleared up. Now, we're supposed to be getting tax statements, tax certifications from the treasurer's office about this.
I think that was that sent to your office, Abby? You may have an email somewhere on that. We all got an email from Vera that said it was paid.
But I was thinking that the treasurer's office was going to deliver. I mean, those typically, one of those at least would typically be recorded.
Should be last minute.
What we're recorded on this.
Here we go. First half, Mark sent us an email on August 10th. First half taxes were paid 8/10.
Okay. So, do we have any problems from either you two with going ahead and approving this and moving forward with it? I would accept a motion
I'll make
to.
a motion to approve this.
Okay. I have a motion from Sandquist to approve this re-subdivision of Lot 5A. Okay, I have a second from Dimmitt. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Okay, we'll follow up as we should with making sure all the paperwork is taken care of here at the courthouse with that. All right, we'll move on then to discuss and consider reinstatement of disposal system contractor's license for Bill Stanley, doing business as Bill Stanley Construction.
For us to do that without seeing the letter.
That's, yeah.
Well,
So
it came in the letter that, or it came
in the note that he had sent,
in the email that he sent.
yeah,
But,
an attachment.
but if you haven't studied it, And I have
We can go ahead and do that at our next meeting.
Okay, that's fine.
We'll move that to that point, if you would, Abby, make a note of that. Thank you. So let's move on to discuss and consider reinstatement of disposal system contractor license for Bill Stanley, doing business as Bill Stanley Construction. We had received an email from who didn't have any problem with this reinstatement. Is there any questions from either of the other two supervisors concerning this particular one?
I'll make a motion to approve this one.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion from Sandquist, a second from Dimmitt to approve reinstatement of the license for Bill Stanley. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We also have a discuss and consider reinstatement of disposal systems contractor's license for Tim Tedrow, doing business as Tedrow Hoe Service. We also received a email from Dan Miller concerning this one, and there was some questions as to whether he was really in support of it or not. I know, Lee, you had done some follow-up on this, so can you let us know what you've found out to this point?
It has been kind of a convoluted process. Abby can attest to that as well as Kelly. I talked to both them and the assessor. There was some question as to whether or not Tim actually owned the property that Dan was referencing, which really has nothing to do with the license, but Dan was using that as a question as whether or not we should approve. I had a subsequent conversation with Dan. I don't want to, Abby, help me out here, but I don't want to say that the issue is completely cleared up, but except for tax purposes, Tim does clearly own the property down. He has indeed been charging rent. And a septic system. See, here's the problem I have. So what I suggested to Dan is that he goes out and performs an inspection.
Right.
And because the permit that Tim pulled is no longer valid, that's only good for a year and a half. It's been 3 years out. I don't think it has anything to do with his license. Dan never performed a kind of transfer inspection on the property. Transfer.
Why not?
Because, and I quote, Tim came in and pulled a permit, so Dan said, I assumed it wasn't functioning properly. And so I don't know that we would have had a legal leg to stand on, not that it's under the supervisor's jurisdiction, but if it came back to bite us with no paperwork or no documentation, which is what I told them.
But this is a separate issue
Well,
than the recycling this that we're discussing right now. So, or how does this play into it so that there is a connection between one and two? Thank you.
The reality of it is he was asking us not to approve this excavator's renewal of his license because he hadn't done these other things. To me, they're an entirely separate issue. And in that vein, because it wasn't done properly on one end, it hasn't been followed up on. And besides some of the hoops that he had to jump through regarding it, there was some deed issues and stuff. I told Dan that I personally would not, or I would personally vote to approve this renewal because I don't think the two are related. I think that he has a job he needs to do and he needs to have a conversation with Tim, but I don't think it applies to this.
Right. So, okay, so do we have a motion then to
Make that motion that we approve the renewal of Tim Tedrow.
for the disposal system contractor's license? Yes. So I have a motion from Dimmitt, a second from Sandquist. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right. We've got some committee reports, I'm sure.
Yeah, I had seal last week. Pretty much routine operational, I can tell you. They put on the agenda at my request to talk about getting the word out better about all the services it still provides. So one of the CDSs is going to work on that and bring that back. Workforce Development is actively seeking local board members. And I know there's one locally who's applied, and I've contacted 2 more people. And the change, there's a major operational change, and that the people on the board really do have some authority or say in the matter, and over 51% of the makeup of the board now needs to be business people, which is good because they're the ones this really affects. And again, Iowa was the last state in the nation to do this for whatever reason, but they're finally getting it implemented now. So that's still in transition. Jerry Parker called me end of last week about our fiscal agent for workforce development because the Wapello County auditor had volunteered to do that, of course, at a price. And his concern was the way the contract was written was that it was her personally. And so we wanted that clarified, and he called me Thursday morning, and Thursday afternoon we happened to have a meeting. So I asked that be clarified, and that was done. So that's in process. Had a chamber meeting, and then been working on receipts and invoices for get reimbursement for the food insecurity grant. One of the interesting challenges has been the level of detail required in the receipts. I mean, they need to be very specific. And so I had to go back to a couple of the people involved and say, hey, we need more within the state frame. Now, the good news there is, which I believe I mentioned, that the original July 20th deadline was so that we, and thank you, fellow members of the board, we get our paperwork done.
Yes.
And so that's why that initial hurry to get the timeline, because they wanted to know we were serious about it. And so we were, and so the good news is that the entities that will receive the funds have until next May to really do the services. And so we're not under a time crunch there. So that's good. And that's what I've got.
Okay.
I just had a bunch of phone calls. My West Board meeting, and the way we're looking at that is that we have directed Bob Breckenridge to start arbitration with the city of Pleasant Plain or town of Pleasant Plain. They're not, they're in violation of the 2080 agreement. We've written them letters, we've reached out to them, and there is an arbitration clause in the contract, so we're going to request arbitration in hopes that we can remedy the situation. I will tell this board that probably at some point in time, not today or tomorrow, only maybe even as soon as next year, they may come to the realization that it's in their best interest to unincorporate. So just so you know that that might be on the horizon. Financially, they're just in serious trouble, and it's a situation that what it amounts to is that because of past circumstances, beyond their control, if you will, their financial wherewithal is they're just in a very tough position. And so indemnifying Russ, which is an agreement that was signed years ago, has become very difficult for them to do. And this may be, I'm not saying it will, but this may be that catalyst that makes them look in a different direction.
All right. My committee this week was the building committee. We lost a tree on the courthouse lawn this last Monday in the storm that we had here that came through Fairfield. We had relatively small amounts of damage around the county compared to a lot of other counties here in Iowa. And a lot of the farmers are thankful that they were able to get through this without as much as what some people had. We've been moving ahead on the courthouse tuck pointing. We've taken care of a lot of the removal of the joint material that was out there on the west or the east and the north sides of the building, and we're now starting to put in material back into the joints that they've cleaned out. We had a meeting with our architect. He came down last Thursday and reviewed the project and found it to be very favorable to where we were supposed to be at this point in time and how much work has been done. And the types of materials that they're using are within the specifications that were called out by his design plans. So we're moving in a positive direction there. Noting that we had lost the tree on the courthouse lawn here, it was one that was dedicated in the memory of Harold Pete Pearson, who was a county supervisor in the late 1990s, I believe it was, late 1980s, somewhere in that time period. I'm not exactly sure. I know that the dedication was done after his death in 2002. So I would like to see us plant a new tree in dedication to him out in the front yard in near the same location. But we will have to have the stump that's currently there removed, and we will salvage the dedication plaque that was on the ground right there by it and relocate it to the new tree location once we've determined where that's going to be at. We also have word now that we may have the equipment to fix the drain problem that we've had at the treasurer's office for the sink drain that's in there, and also relocation and new installation of drinking fountain down in the basement. Instead of being in between the two restroom doors, it would be moved over to the wall directly beside the drinking or the pop machine that's down there in the basement. There'll be a shorter bench or chairs put in place of the longer bench that was there. So once that's all taken care of, there's quite a bit of plumbing and electrical that goes along with that. We're hoping that if they've received the pump at Jagan's Plumbing and Heating, they will be able to come out and start on that hopefully this week. I'm not guaranteeing anything. It's been 3 months so far. It seems like we haven't wanted to do anything, but it's not the case. We've had so many other issues that have come up with this particular plumbing issue. We have a drain that runs underneath the concrete floor in the basement that goes from where the down drain is from the treasurer's office under the floor towards the elevator and then goes straight out to the street. Well, the line that's underneath that portion of the floor is either blocked with something that they cannot get removed or has collapsed to the point there's nothing to be able to move out of the way to through there or be able to drain. So instead of tearing up the entire floor and replacing one section of pipe, we're looking at these alternatives. And that's what's taken a while for being able to get this project accomplished. But we've been moving ahead, albeit slow, on all our improvements here on the courthouse. And I'm very pleased to see how they've been going. So that would, well, you're welcome. That's my committee report. I don't see that we have any public in here right now. Do we have any public comments that have come to one of the supervisors?
Scott brought some earplugs over and we're going to leave them in the auditor's office if anybody in the courthouse needs them.
Right. I had a discussion with the architect about those earplugs as well. The current work that they're doing doesn't meet the standard by OSHA of 85 decibels or higher for requirement of hearing protection. But when the activity starts of cutting the caulking out around the window areas and then putting that back in, it will be a good thing to have those on hand, because that will be very loud compared to what we've been hearing so far with either the small jackhammer or the grinders that they've been using on the exterior joints.
So if we run out of these, is it okay to call you?
I'm gonna ask that, I mean, if you want to purchase a box of them the next time the truck comes around, I mean, that's probably the cheapest way to get
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it makes sense because this is going to be going on. You said it come around anytime.
there once a month, and it'd probably be a couple more weeks at least before
So
they're back.
this is gonna be going on for a while.
Yeah, we're still gonna be at this October timeframe. Hopefully we'll be done before election day in November. I'm hoping.
So it's about
So-
100.
So do we have any public comments that have come in from anybody to us so far? All right.
I had a question. I was trying to look out and see what was left of that tree. I mean, is it all down?
Well, yeah, it's all in. There's only a stump that varies in height from about 3 inches down to really close to the ground. We're gonna need to get it ground off though.
Yeah, Bill and I were looking at that before they started work on that, and that bark was stripped off of.
Yeah, and Billy called me before he cut it all the way down. I told him, yeah, go ahead. I had sent some pictures off and had to go with it. But yeah, that's not worth salvaging because it split it right in the middle where the tree had branched out this direction like this. And it pulled away, and then you could see all the rotted wood on both what was left there and what was down on the ground. And I had thought at one time if they trimmed off what was there, the rest would be at least salvageable, but that area was too thin and it wouldn't have had any structural support. I think it was an oak tree.
No, it was made.
Maple? Okay, it was a maple tree. So,
You'll be, I know that your best friend Steve Listening was out sawing up limbs and putting them in his truck and taking them with him for some purpose. Maybe to feed the horses he never gives hay to, I don't know.
anyway, all right. So we've got that and taken care of. We're going to move forward with that. Now we'll move to allow claims and approve reports. A motion from Bennett and a second from Sandquist to approve the claims and reports. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Do we have any discussion on nuisance properties, Mr. Bennett?
No, I don't have anything new. I'll tell you guys, I guess, that within the last 2 to 3 weeks, I got a report from Russ that one of the properties has been,
Good.
in that case, foreclosed in court. I know that there was one that was paid off in full, the civil penalty and the court costs and everything. And those folks tell me they're continuing to work, and I think they have made some progress, but not enough to avoid getting to the point of making some payments, and they decided to just pay it all in full. So.
Okay, well, that's good. That's a good report that we actually had somebody follow through and clean up everything on their own and get everything dismissed. That's a relief when I hear that. So we have some discussion coming up of some pending litigation. I am not sure whether we're going to go into closed session with this or not. Our attorney is here with us. What is your recommendation on that, Pat?
My recommendation is to go into closed session, pursuant to statute that allows for that. I never like to put closed session on the agenda because ultimately that's up to you guys whether it's closed or not, but it would be my recommendation.
Okay.
I'll move the per recommendation of our attorney that we go into closed session this time.
Okay, I have a motion from Dimmitt, a second from Sandquist to go into closed session to discuss litigation, pending litigation for the county. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Okay, we'll go into closed session. We'll resume here in just a few minutes. Thank you, everybody, for joining us for our meeting here on Zoom today. And we'll see you next Monday.
So for clarification, Abby, the grounds for closed session is chapter 21.1